Okay, so last episode's Sword and Sorcery Return didn't work out like I had hoped. And while I'm not looking to delve into another Sword and Sorcery fantasy MMO game, I will need to do something. Maybe something simple, something that's been out for a while and established. Maybe something that does things just differently enough from the rest that... Oh, an email. Could I just... 1 second.
Hey, John.
Oh, hey, Lewis. Sorry, I was just getting a lot of messages about... Never mind. So, do you need those takes from me now?
Well, I know you only do free-to-play MMOs, so I just wanted to let you know that Star Trek Online just went free-to-play.
Why, no, Lewis. I did not know that, as no one has told me about it yet. Thank you so much for informing me.
No problem, man. You have a good day. Alright, now to call Obscurus Lupa and let her know that Mike Matei already reviewed Robo-Vampire.
Alright, fine. I know it went free-to-play a little while ago. You know what else went free-to-play a little while ago? Lineage 2. I can't keep up with all these things. Another reason I don't keep jumping on all the new titles is time. There's always a certain fervor when a game goes free-to-play. There's a huge influx of players, the company reports record profits, and then a few months later everyone stops caring and moves on to the next flavor of the week. And that happened to be this game for me, one I fell for the fervor for back when I had to pay for it. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Star Trek Online. Okay, I know I usually leave all the personal history stuff before I show the title card, but I need to go just a little bit further into this. I paid nearly $100 for this, and here's what I get. Let's see here. Really nice box, but, I got a Starfleet pin there. Oh, that's nice. Oh, what else? Oh, look, real useful. Here, what do we got? Look, guest passes. That's gonna come in handy now. Oh, let's see, what else do I have? An art book. Little art book here for us. Art of Star Trek Online, and... in here we've got the game. That's weird. Okay, that's it. That was the entirety of the collector's edition for nearly $100. And for reference, I paid less for this! You know how long I played it? A day. It's not that the game was bad. Well, I'll come to these points when I get into the actual review. Released in early 2010 by Cryptic and originally published by Atari until it was sold to Perfect World? Really? Star Trek Online is a hybrid space and ground combat MMO, taking elements from fantasy MMO games, space shooters, and first/third-person shooters. It started out as a subscription-based game and recently changed over to a free-to-play/sub-hybrid game, about a month ago in January of 2012. Now, this is normally where I go into the story, but seeing as how Star Trek has a legion of fans of the franchise already, not just the game, I thought I'd show you a comprehensive list of everything I know about Star Trek. No, I didn't forget to add text. So instead, I had someone a bit more knowledgeable give me the rundown. Set around 30 years after the events of Star Trek Nemesis, things aren't looking so great. War has erupted with the Klingons, the Borg have begun encroaching on Federation space, and the Romulans are doing their best to recover after the destruction of their homeworld. In addition to all that, other forces are moving in and beginning to make their presence known and controlling the final frontier. Yes, Lewis did write that. So, since my enjoyment of this game will not be hampered or enhanced by my love or hate of its license, I'll be reviewing this game as a game, not a tie-in. So with that being cleared up, let's begin. This game features some great graphics for a free-to-play. Of course, having roots in a big-budget subscription game will do that. Character models are complex and well animated, with lots of clothing and body tweaking options, which I'll get into when I get into gameplay. Environments themselves are also great to look at, but I honestly think space is a much more amazing sight to behold than the rather standard ship interior and planets of the ground missions. Even your ship itself is very detailed and amazing looking, so you're probably going to need a PC that can handle the graphics, or be prepared to set everything to minimum. I noticed the game getting seriously bogged down in sections where there was a lot of stuff on screen, especially in some of the space missions, so be prepared for that if you're running on a slower PC. On ground, I've noticed a fair share of jarring clipping issues where the camera will spaz out if you run by an object in just the wrong way. Your character also seems to enter slow motion whenever they collide with a ground object, and that seems really off to me. There's quite a bit of shaking screen effects that aren't the result of clipping as well, such as when you perform a transwarp. Unfortunately, this also happens when you're near another ship entering transwarp on the map. It will take a bit to get used to. I'd say the music in the game is pretty good. You hear a lot of the same tracks over and over again, and some of the songs are so low-key you'd swear it was just ambient silence. But the music is all very Star Trek if you're the kind of person who would use Star Trek as an adjective. An interesting spin on the music is that it'll change depending on your situation, such as entering or leaving combat, or reaching a certain part of the story in your missions, not just the area you're currently in. I've played other MMOs that have done this, but they're pretty rare. Sound is also exactly what you'd expect from Star Trek, and the game is loaded with iconic sounds from the franchise. So much so that when I was playing during a Skype call, Welshie kept naming off what sounds he was currently hearing, such as the beam-up or the phasers, and he was absolutely correct. I guess the best way to put this is, if you're a Star Trek fan, this soundtrack should not disappoint. Since this game is available through Steam, you can have it downloaded and installed through the Steam service, skipping over any of those dodgy installers most free-to-play MMOs make you use. It's still available through Perfect World's website if you really don't like Steam. Regardless, you'll have to sign up with an account either with Perfect World or with your existing Cryptic account if you had one when the game was still in their hands. Once logged in, you're going to notice the Cryptic loading screen, which takes its sweet-ass time. While I'd say it's not a great indicator of how much the game loads, it's not usually this bad, but can get overbearing for some. Loading screens are a very common occurrence in this game, and you need to press a key or mouse click once they've finished. You'll notice you'll be taken to the character creation screen right away instead of a server screen. Simply put, this game doesn't have traditional servers. Instead, like Cryptic's other game, Champions Online, everyone is technically playing on the same server, but each area is divided by a few dozen channels which you can jump across at nearly any time. Now notice that while it shows you the option to make a Federation or a Klingon character, you can't actually make a Klingon character until you've reached level 25 with a Federation character. Since the game only gives you one character slot unless you pay for another, or subscribe, I won't be looking at the Klingon characters at all. I'm not sure if you can just delete your Federation character once they reach level 25 to free up a slot to make a Klingon, so feel free to let me know in the comments if you can. But I wasn't about to delete hours of work just to test to see if I could play as a faction of pissed-off aliens with receding hairlines and ridged foreheads. Hey, y'all work pretty fast. It didn't take long before I was informed of something I missed here. It seems that once you reach level 25, your account automatically unlocks a second character slot so you can create a Klingon character. However, I still feel 2 slots is a bit limiting, so what I'll eventually say about purchasing more slots still stands, just for different reasons. This is actually a pretty deep and complex character creator, compared to most games. You can tweak all facial and body parts to look how you'd like, and it's pretty close to the character creator of Champions Online and City of Heroes. However, considering that most aliens in Star Trek look like humans wearing various Halloween masks, facial markings, or body paint, don't expect to look too much different from other players at a distance. There's 2 options in creating a character. You can either choose from a preset group of iconic Star Trek races, each with their own stats and abilities, but you're locked into a more limited creator and a certain few skills. Alternatively, you can choose to create a race simply called Alien, which will allow you full customization of your look and skill set. You also choose between making your character an engineering officer, tactical officer, or science officer. Engineering officers are most like a tanking or defense class, tactical or combat and DPS oriented, and science officers are set up as support and healers. Once decided, you'll begin to partake in a long, complex tutorial with several types of missions that will walk you through the game's basics. Control is done by default with the WASD keys, shift to run, and space to jump when moving your character around, but things can differ depending on what you're currently doing in the game. For example, you'll first be introduced to what players refer to as ground combat. This is where you'd control your character in a fight. Aside from the standard movement, you can double tap in a direction to do a rolling dive. You have a set of hotkeys that define themselves to attacks with your phaser or current weapon, as well as item use. While the game can generally be controlled like a standard fantasy MMO, like clicking on your enemy to target them and clicking a skill to attack, at launch the players always felt this was the weakest part of the game, so they added an option to give things a new twist, a shooter mode. In order to enter shooter mode, press B. The game now controls like a first-person or third-person shooter. WASD now works like an FPS, where you'd use W and S to move forward and backwards, and use A and D to strafe. You can use the mouse to both steer your character and move your targeting reticule to point at an enemy, and then left-click when the reticule turns red to fire at them. You can also right-click to use the secondary fire function on your weapon, or middle-click to do your knockback melee attack. Use F to interact with objects, press Z to switch between your first and second equipped weapon. You can also press X to enter a down-the-scope mode that increases your shot's power, and press C to kneel and take a more defensive position. Anytime you want to exit out of shooter mode and gain control of your mouse cursor, just hit B again. While the ground combat is a lot more fun in shooter mode, the aforementioned fact that all Star Trek aliens tend to look like humans means that you'll be shooting at the same and similar looking targets over and over again, and there's really little variety to the combat beyond spamming your attacks. There is a strategy involved in which you get behind or to the side of an opponent to cause extra damage by flanking them, but most people in this game feel that the ground combat is vastly inferior to the space combat. So, why is space combat so much better? It's a much different style of combat than seen in most MMOs, and there's a lot more variety to be had here. First off, you control the speed of your ship with a throttle. You can choose to cut your engines altogether, reverse them slowly, speed them up by a small amount all the way up to a full throttle, or use the full impulse where you place all of your ship's power towards the engines and blast forward at a much faster rate. Full impulse cannot be used in combat, and entering combat with full impulse active will cause you to have little energy placed on your weapons or shields, so it's unwise to keep it engaged when approaching the enemy. Energy management also plays key, as there are 4 modes you can place your ship in: attack, defense, speed, and balance, where your ship's power will be greatly boosted towards one focus, with the exception of balance, which evens everything out. Luckily, you can switch between these at any time. For example, if you want to go in guns blazing, you can choose attack mode. But once you start getting pounded by other ships, you can switch over to defense mode to weather the storm, or speed mode to attempt to slip away. In order to attack a ship, you need to be within range, which in this game is 10 kilometers, easily marked above the enemy. Weapons each possess different properties and targeting arcs, where some can only fire when the ship is faced forward, and others can even fire when the ship turns to face the enemy on their side. An early strategy the game offers you is to turn your side towards the enemy so you can fire on them with both your forward and aft beam weapons at once, then turn back to fire a photon torpedo once the enemy shields are down. You'll find and equip other weapons as the game goes on, allowing you to change your strategy as you see fit. To defend yourself, you'll notice 4 shields around your ship that will deplete when you take incoming fire. An interesting strategy there is that you can choose to focus your shield power on any one of the 4 shields by clicking on their buttons below. For example, if you're facing a frontal barrage, you can click on the forward shield to pull power from the remaining 3. To rebalance your shield, you can click the ship icon in the middle of your shields as well. One thing that bugs me about space combat is the game doesn't allow for 360-degree vertical rotation, and that comes off as really odd in a space sim. There's a definitive ceiling and floor in space, and you can't directly fly vertical. Close to it, but not really. My other gripe with space combat when I first played has been fixed. Originally, it was practically a war of attrition, where boosting power to shields was completely ineffectual against multiple enemies, and oddly enough, 2 birds of prey could kill you constantly, while 1 lone battleship was a complete pushover. It's been balanced out much better since then, allowing you to take on 2 or 3 smaller ships alone if you're not a complete idiot, but making fights against battleships and the larger ships in the game in general a lot more challenging. Space combat in general feels a lot slower than what you might be used to, but it's definitely the more intense and interesting of the 2 options. When you finish your tutorial mission, you'll be taken to the Earth's space dock, which acts as a central town or hub in this game. Here you'll find more missions, equipment shops, places to upgrade your ship, and so on. It's a big round circle, but takes some time getting used to where everything is located here. In order to visit other systems and planets, you'll have to exit into sector space, which is like an overworld map screen. While you can choose to explore things on your own, many missions request you visit a very specific system, which you can find named on the map screen. You can also plot an autopilot course to reach it by right-clicking on the system's icon. Sector space is also like a large flat plane, causing you to travel in what will seem very slowly in one of only 4 directions to reach your destination. When you have to travel across several sectors, you might find yourself clicking autopilot and going to get yourself a drink. It's also a real pain to turn around and go the other way if you miss something you wanted to check out. Missions in this game are a serious time investment, often asking several sections of different types of gameplay, so be prepared to have to go through a few ground and space combat sessions before you reach the end of it. There's a risk-reward system in place with missions where you can set the mission difficulty level. Going through on the default normal mode involves no risks whatsoever, but choosing a higher difficulty will grant you greater rewards at the risk of higher penalties for death in this game. When getting defeated on ground or in space on normal, you risk nothing but a short respawn time with no penalty to your experience or your equipment. But if you play on higher difficulties, you and your ship incur damage, which can be healed with specific items, or just by paying with energy credits. Death increases this injury risk, and a high amount of injuries will affect your stats until they are fixed. Not all missions involve making something explode, however, or there are side missions beyond the main story missions that have you acting as a diplomat, rescuing stranded vessels, or just doing basic scientific research or gathering. There are some missions that require you to have certain items in your inventory. For example, an early mission will ask you to head to the Delta Volantis cluster, a mostly uncharted region where you'll find random anomalies that could be crafting items or short planetary missions. One of these will ask you to give them 10 provisions, and if you don't have them on you, luckily you can head out to purchase them and return to the same planet later by clicking the appropriate button that appears once you re-enter the cluster. Alternatively, you can use your replicator on your inventory screen to purchase them as well, as long as you don't mind paying a little extra for them. An issue I have with a lot of missions is that they might be a bit vague about what you need to do. Sometimes an NPC will tell you where you need to go, but it won't be marked in your mission tracker, and if you go back to the NPC, he won't tell you again until you abandon the mission and try it over again. You can find what was recently told you on the communication block of the mission tracker if you need to check what was said before. Some tasks you perform in missions almost have a puzzle-like quality to them, making it so that you'll have to listen to each NPC carefully in order to progress. A good thing about missions is that you almost never have to find a specific NPC to start or turn one in. Everything can be completed with the Hail Starfleet button on your minimap. While there is a few ways to track where you need to go for certain objectives, you can often use your scanner to pinpoint the next objective. Scanner is more often used in the crafting system, however. Press V to use the scanner, and when you use it, it'll point in the direction and a message "There are X amount of anomalies left in this area" will appear. Usually the number will read 2 or 3, and when you use the scanner, more often than not, it'll point towards one of these anomalies. When you come across one, either in space or on the ground, click Scan Anomaly to begin a short minigame where you need to match a red wavelength to a blue one. You still get materials if you fail, but you'll get more, as well as a chance for rare ones if you match it in time. These materials are then used in crafting, which can be initially performed in Memory Alpha, a system located in the Alpha Centauri block. Once you reach there, locate the crafting table in the center of the base, and you can use any of the gathered materials to create consumables or schematics to create more complex items, like personal or ship weapons and components. The issue is that you'll need a lot of these materials to craft, and they will take up a ton of space in your inventory as you gather them. You'll also be unable to make certain items until you've gained more points in R&D by crafting lesser items. It's a bit of a time investment. As I just mentioned, your inventory gets cluttered very fast, and even without these, you'll end up picking up a lot of junk that you might not need or want, which I found that on occasion end up hiding or masking over something I actually would want. There's been plenty of times I was sorting through all the random drops, only to suddenly notice I somehow picked up a new photon torpedo launcher ages ago that's much better than the ones I've been using. Interestingly enough, with this limited inventory, the discard option doesn't do what you'd think it does. Yes, it does remove the item from your inventory, but instead of just dropping or deleting it, you get money for it as if you had sold it to a vendor. You can even use your replicator to buy it back later, so while I found the amount of drops can be a pain, it's nice that you have the option of selling them at literally any time you want without having to travel somewhere to do it. Equipment in the game is limited to a few things. Your character can equip a personal shield, 2 different weapons, a kit, which is an equipable ability, such as a grenade to toss, and finally an armor suit. Wearing a suit will overwrite your appearance, but you can right-click on the suit in your equipment screen and choose to turn off the suit effect. If you're like me, you didn't spend 10 minutes trying to get the look of your uniform right, just so you can end up cosplaying as Iron Man. You can also equip components and weapons onto your ship in a similar manner. Larger ships got more slots for equipment. Another way to upgrade your character is by pressing the K key to open your skills menu. And here you'll find a list of skills that affect your ship as well as your character. You can do things like increase the damage you do with weapons or increase the speed your ship moves. Once you reach level 10 and concurrently the rank of Lieutenant Commander, you're given access to a new ship. You can choose from the basic ship types, a cruiser, an escort, and a science vessel. Cruisers are the high defense ships with 2 slots for engineering officers. Escorts are the high damage ships with 2 slots for tactical officers. And science vessels are the support ships with 2 slots for science officers. To put it in the simplest MMO terms... What do I mean by 2 slots for officers? Well, early on in the tutorial level, you're given an NPC called a bridge officer that will accompany you on ground and space missions. Just like your character, these bridge officers can specialize in engineering, tactical, or science, and have abilities in each. You can also equip them with the same gear you could equip yourself, but they only have 1 weapon slot and cannot equip kits. When receiving an officer, you can change their physical appearance and outfit just like your character, but you cannot change their race or their gender. When you gain a new officer, you'll find them in the Stations tab. If your bridge roster is currently full, you can choose to keep them around in standby, have them train their ability to an existing officer, or dismiss a current bridge officer to allow them in their place. Keep in mind you'll lose any gear that officer has equipped and waste any skill points you assign to them when you dismiss them. A bridge officer's role in ground combat is to act as an NPC pet who will attack targets you're attacking or cast occasional abilities. In space combat, they act as several more abilities for your ship, such as tactical officers allowing you to fire several torpedoes at once, or an engineering officer giving you a fast boost to your shields. You can upgrade their skills in the skill menu as well, and they use separate skill points from the ones you'd use on your character. One final thing of easily missed note is the duty officer, well, I'll just call it a minigame. In order to partake in this, you need to head down to Starfleet Academy where you'll be given a starter pack of duty officers. With this, you can assign these officers to perform away missions. When you choose a mission, you'll be given a list of requirements for success, critical success, and failure. Placing the right officers with the right traits in these slots will increase your chances of success in these missions, and you'll get small bonuses if you do. Once assigned, all you have to do is wait for the appropriate amount of time until the mission is completed, and the timer works online or offline. As you can see, this game does get pretty complex, and some have described it as being outright unapproachable. I'm sure there's still more I haven't touched on, but hell, discovery is half the fun after all. This game is crowded. Well, it's crowded mostly in the hub areas or when traveling, but you'll notice tons of people constantly talking all the time. It'll be hard to get a word in edgewise if you're looking for some assistance. Not to say you won't get it. This game suffers from the popular MMO principle, where half the players are obnoxious jerks and the other half are helpful and willing to assist, but it seems to depend on what random time of the day you logged on. Since, again, everyone is technically on the same server, but in different channels, you can hop around to find a less or more crowded place at your convenience. I mentioned that people are obnoxious, but they're not invasive. There's nothing they can do to you besides yell or whisper a lot, which can be ignored, hop around making noise or doing generally stupid things, also ignorable, and just name their ships and characters really stupid names. They can't kill steal, they can't PK you considering that every system is instant, and you're alone unless you bring someone along. If you do join a group, you're given an option to match the level of the party leader, similar to sidekicking systems, so you can hold your own when joining those of higher level. If you head too far away from your party leader though, you'll lose the level boost, so keep that in mind when playing alongside high-level players. The game does have an auction house system called the Exchange, which works fairly painlessly, giving you the money for your auctions the very second they are sold, and it's instantly deposited into your energy credits, rather than having to open or wait for a message to accept it. There are designated PvP and Pve Fleet Actions throughout the game that you can use to earn great items, as well as dilithium, which acts as a secondary currency. You can use it to buy better weapons, more bridge officers, and even exchange it for the cash shop's Cryptic Points, which means it's time to talk about that. As I just mentioned, since this game was once under control of Cryptic and Atari, the cash shop currency is called Cryptic Points. If you're wondering just how the hell to buy Cryptic Points when the perfect world currency is called Zen, there's a solution, I guess. An odd thing about Perfect World I didn't mention in the Rusty Hearts review is that when you purchase Zen from them, you have to choose which game you want to transfer it to. If you choose to send it to STO, you're met with something I've not seen before: a cash shop exchange rate. 100 points of Zen equates to only 80 Cryptic Points. Granted, items don't cost as much Cryptic Points as they do Zen most of the time, but it's still pretty off-putting. Alternatively, it seems you can purchase Cryptic Points through Steam Wallet, whatever that is. The cash shop contains all the regular stuff you'd expect to see: XP boosters, cosmetic clothing options for characters, non-combat pets, and what have you. If there's anything I would suggest getting, it would be another character slot, as it'd be nice to explore both factions in this game, rather than be shoehorned with only one character. Since the inventory is vastly limited, buying more space isn't a bad idea either, especially if you're looking to get into crafting. While you can earn more duty officers when doing duty missions, you can also choose to purchase more in the cash shop if you so desire. A recent and somewhat controversial addition to the game is Cardassian boxes. No, I didn't say what you think I said. Cardassian boxes drop normally from enemies, but are completely useless unless you purchase keys to open them from the cash shop. The controversy is that these more often than not contain simple consumable or normal dropped loot, but the gamble involved is the chance to obtain a Galar-class Cardassian ship for your character, which isn't purchasable normally. Considering each key costs over $1, I don't think you're getting the best deal here, seeing as ships can be purchased outright and there are many to choose from. But the amount of messages I see informing me some other player has unlocked that ship makes me wonder just how many people are buying into this. Of course, if you want to circumvent a lot of the limit, you can always subscribe. Packs come in 1 month, 3 month, and 6 months, unless you're a big spender with a lot of faith in the game, where you can drop down a whopping $300 to become a lifetime subscriber. So, hope the game lasts a lot longer than 2 years to make that purchase worthwhile. Okay, I know the intro made a few jokes at expense of a lot of people who were just trying to keep me informed, and my history with this game and reluctance to play it stems entirely from my own stupidity, but at least I remembered why I didn't want to keep paying for it. As a free-to-play though, this game is an outstanding title, and I'd suggest it to anyone who's a fan of Star Trek, or at least space combat in general. Here's my final rating. If you're looking for a more polished free-to-play game than what's usually available, this game's high-budget subscription routes show, and the changeover to Perfect World hasn't dropped the game back. If you want a game that has multiple ways to engage in combat that differ greatly from each other, this is the only one I've come across that can deliver that. This game might hold more charm for you if you're a Star Trek fan in general, or at the very least if you want a sci-fi space MMO in the sea of fantasy MMOs. I'd suggest getting more inventory slots, as limited space is one of my biggest gripes with free-to-play MMOs, especially ones as loot-heavy as this. If you're into the cosmetics or just like variety, purchasing better ships and more costume pieces might be up your alley, but the prices can get a bit steep. I would recommend getting at least one other character slot if you plan on sticking with this game, as you're only getting half the experience by being stuck with a Federation. Of course, you can always bypass most annoyances by subscribing to the game if you so desire. Hell, the option for a lifetime subscription doesn't come across too much, and it's not entirely a terrible idea as long as the game holds out. One thing that bugged me about this game when I was paying for it is how repetitive it felt. Once you've done a few space and ground missions, you've done them all, and you're going to feel it if you've played for hours at a time. Travel also seems really slow for going at supposed warp speed, so if you're the type who wants to get everywhere and fast, you might be put off by the seemingly sluggish movement of the ships. Ground combat still gets harped on to this day, and even with the new control option, you're still just spamming phaser shots at humanoid targets until they die. You'll probably spend most ground missions just hoping you eventually beam back to your ship and do some real damage. Okay, that was way more complex than I thought it would end up being. So, next time I'm gonna look at a much simpler game. One where I can blow things up on good old Earth.
I figured it'd be funnier if I was still wearing the hat. Despite, the fact that it doesn't really fit on top of this thing. Might not work. I'll try, though. No problem, man. You have a good day. No problem, man. Nope. Try to nod my head and that's what happens. No problem, man. You have a good day. Alright, now to call Obscurus Lupa and let her know that Mike Matei already reviewed Robo-Vampire. No. I will make this bit work, damn it.